Welcome back. Africa's political leadership has been the subject of criticism for dictatorship, human rights violations and corruption, among others. The African continent is endowed with natural minerals and human capital, and yet change seems slugging under the old guard. Should Africa take a leaf from French President Emmanuel Macron, who was 39 years old when he was elected, making him the youngest president in the history of France, and former US President Barack Obama, who was 43 on his election? With the leadership challenges in Africa, we ask if Africa's hope lies in a younger breed of leaders. Joining us is Dr. Charles Sinkala, an international relations expert and political analyst originally from Zambia. He speaks on the true state of Africa's politics and the need for a breed of young leaders. Welcome to Africa Tonight, Doctor.
Good evening from there, and good evening to your viewers. It's a pleasure having me.
No, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you
now,
very much.
Doctor, what in your view would you say today is the state of our politics on the continent?
You see, we must get to the background of where we're coming from. I think that is important for us to focus and forge and know where we're going. Africa has been described by many as a healthy and rich human resource and capital, though many people have said that it's the poorest continent in the world. But we've got a lot of challenges into leaders, you know, especially from the old leaders.
But with that, if we had to talk about the political landscape today, as Africa, yes, you talk of the positives, so would you say the only negative is the old guard or the older leadership, or could we delve deeper into the exact problems with that old leadership?
During the colonial, sometime maybe back in the 15th century and 16th century, there was colonization which affected Africa. And from that time, people went through a lot of things, including the torture, slavery. And that colonialism brought about things like dictatorship, you know, because people now got the power from this colonial regime. So they said, I'll be the life president, you know, because they suffered torture, they were imprisoned. So now they've got the power from the colonial powers, and now they say, no, I'm going to be there as a life president. And this is the problem in Africa, you know, because they want to take over everything. And they do not want to give power, and also that dictatorship also brought up things like apartheid here in South Africa, you know, which has significantly affected the level ground on political ground.
Now, if we had to make an example, perhaps with Robert Mugabe, he seems to be the best example in most cases, if I can say so. Now with him, this is a man we would say is a liberator. His political pedigree is unmatched. But it becomes difficult for some to reconcile that Mugabe to the Mugabe of now. So what would you say to those that always raise the argument of the time-honored wisdom, that when we talk of these old politicians, we have to acknowledge that they come with that wealth of knowledge because they've lived through various political eras. And for that, we need that kind of knowledge. And then some would argue for the youth of today to say they come from a different school of thought and come with valuable knowledge themselves. Do you then foresee some sort of intergenerational governance here, where in Africa we need that, where both the old guard and the youth of today can work together to govern?
Yes, you see, I agree with you, but the problem with these old guards, they do not want to share the power. They say, I'm the liberator, I'm the everything, I'm the, he has a life president. So as a human being, you are given task, you know, or you are born to do certain part of life, to change life for everybody. But these that do not want to relinquish, they said there's nobody else. I mean, Mugabe's lived a lot of generations, a lot of people are capable, even better than him, should have led Zimbabwe to a better country. But after his liberation from the colonial, which he did good thing, and everybody saluted that. I mean, he owns honors for doing that for his country. But as time went by, the decades went by, his policies finished because all his achievement was based on liberation from the colonial. From there, he hasn't got anything.
Then to perhaps now throw the bait in, if we had to talk about the youth, their participation in politics or civic movements. I mean, do you see young people coming to the party? Because in South Africa, for instance, we lived in an era not so long ago where the young were said to be apolitical, that they are more into gadgets and just self-absorbed, so to say. But 2015 was a watershed moment where we saw the Fees Must Fall movement. Would you say that they really are stepping up to the party? Is that indicative of a youth with a new, different way of entering the political discourse?
Look, the new generations now, they've had it enough, you know, because they gave so much faith in these old guards, and now they say, no, I think this is not the way it's supposed to be, you know. So now they coming around, they're getting involved in, as much as other ones, they have said, no, politics is a dirty game, politics is what will I do even if I vote, you know. But the youths now, they have realized that if they do not take control of their own particular countries, then there will be a disaster. So that's why they are protesting against anything which is inhuman or anything which is against their what they voted for.
Mm-hmm. But then comes the contentious part. As Africans, we are always pro-Africa, as in we always want to push the African agenda. Now, what happens when we now have become more critical? Because some battle with that should we criticize our African leaders lest we are accused of perhaps sacrificing our continent at the altar of Westerners? How do we reconcile that matter where we want to be critical, but at the same time you don't want to be accused of being a Westerner or somebody that subscribes to the politics of the West? How do we then, as young people, come into the fore and discuss or criticize our leaders just for the betterment or progression of Africans?
Yeah, look, I have to draw you back to the constitutions of most African countries, especially maybe South Africa maybe has changed its own constitution because of the amendments and the Bill of Rights and the Freedom Charter, what has been inclusively added into their constitution. But for other countries like Zambia, Zimbabwe, and the rest of the African continent, there's too much power into the president. You know, so the president cannot allow anybody to interfere or to be against whatever he believes in. So everybody must believe in that. So the authority from the presidents into these other countries, most of the African countries, was derived from this dictatorship, the apartheid. You know, so they just got that one, they amended it. But having said that, you know, I think the governments at the moment, the current governments into these continents and into Africa as a continent, the individual countries, they must engage the young ones. You know, now we look at, like here in South Africa, the DA has got Musimai Mane there, who is very vocal and articulate. You know, he's trying to address himself, and you know, even better than somebody who just goes there and sleep in the parliament.
But perhaps, I know you mentioned the Democratic Alliance, but then some could argue that if maybe you went to the EFF and you talked about young leaders there, the ANC could speak and say that they're an old organization, 100 years plus. So you cannot expect the party to only constitute or be, or where we have a large number of young people. Yes, we do, but also the older generation play a very important role. So that could also be the argument that the older the party, the more then you would see the old guard there. So what happens with that argument?
Yes, you know, not necessarily the old guard, you know, they are better. You know, we've witnessed what they have done because of the past, what happened to them. Look, there is also an element of morality and integrity into these older guys, which they are lacking. You know, so the moral uprightness of these leaders, it's questionable. You know, we've seen a lot of corruption happening, and they can't safeguard and keep the oath. You know, they can't keep their own resources. You know, and the Western countries now, they capitalize on that because there's infighting in Africa, you know. And just now I was reading an article where they say the minerals, the resources in Africa, they determined by London Metal Exchange, you know. So you mine something in Africa and you can't put a price on that, on your cost of production, then you take it to London and they have to put a price on that. You know, so there is a lot of infighting and something which has to be said, no, please, we're working towards a common cause, you know, to make Africa as a better continent. you know, so that each and every person will benefit as well, and not only the elite.
So I take it then that you belong to that school of thought that says the future lies with the young.
Yes, yes, I'll say that.
No, we hear you. Thank you very much, Dr. Sinkala, for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
That's
Thanks
a
for
pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.